Today, we become legends.
Smite's god designs could be so much more interesting. Hey, my name's Inter, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, then be sure to subscribe for all my content coming soon. Today, I'm going to be looking at a Reddit post. I don't do this very often, I'm not too active over on the Smite Reddit, but I used to be quite active on Smite Reddit actually, a long time ago, and this post was submitted 2 years ago, as you can see. And when I originally came across this post, I found it really interesting, but my channel was really small like 2 years ago. This is probably like two and a half years ago. My channel was like 10k subs or less or something, and I didn't really feel like making a video reviewing a Reddit post really was justified for such a small channel. I don't know, kind of a weird thing. But yeah, we're now like almost 80,000 subscribers or something. We're a pretty influential Smite channel here, and we have a big community going. And I thought I'd do a review of this post because it was really interesting to me, and I think Smite's gods, they do have some very interesting ones, but there's a lot of unexplored potential. I'll leave it at that. I'm not gonna trash any god designs because I think a lot of Smite's gods are super fun, despite being quite simple. They do a lot with the simplistic kits that they have, and still make them very fun. But there's so many things they could do to just make the characters a lot more interesting, in my opinion. And this Reddit post from a guy named Chaos, I believe is how you say that, Chaos-0 on Reddit. Be sure to check him out. He has a ton of karma, so I think he's quite a big Reddit user. Check him out on Reddit and wherever else you can find him, because I by no means take credit for this work. This is entirely his work, coming up with all these cool ideas. I'm just reviewing them. This is not my work. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. So check out Chaos-0 on Reddit if you want to explore this stuff more. But he used to post a lot of god concepts on the Smite Reddit back in the day. And as you can read at the top of this post, he's just not doing god concepts anymore, and he's just essentially dumped his list of look how many there are here. His list of like mechanics for gods and sort of kit design themes for gods and stuff like that. So we're gonna go through all these basically, and I'm gonna voice my opinions on them, whether I think they could work in Smite, how interesting they are, and just my general thoughts on Smite's god designs and how I think they could be improved. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into this one. So his first thing here is a summoner, a god kit who revolves primarily around summoning different kinds of pets / mobs. They will be traditional like burst damage, utility, debuffs, all that kind of stuff. So we somewhat have this in a way. We do have gods that summon things, and actually Tiamat, releasing soon as of the recording of this video, is somewhat of a summoner. Like her ultimate flying stance, the toggle ultimate, that's basically a summoning stance kind of thing, where she can summon 3 different things. So, sort of, but I would like to see a god that was, like, completely focused around summoning, where, like, 3 out of their 4 abilities were, like, summoning, and you really interact with the summons and things like that. I think that could be really interesting. There's growing and shrinking, a mechanic that has a god growing or shrinking their player model, and possibility to grant tankiness, grant movement speed, things like that. Very cool, you know, we've got stuff like Achilles' armor, for example, that kind of works like this, where you can sort of choose to be armor or non-armor and gain different stats based on that, but, an actual like model size change could be very interesting. I think there's something like this in League of Legends. Is it Cho'Gath? I'm not sure. I don't play a lot of League, but for those of you that do play League, you can correct me down below if I'm wrong on that. I think it's Cho'Gath though, where he can like eat stuff and he gets bigger in League. There's multi-class, a god that can change their class between the 5 classes. This would require a lot of balance, but I think it could be pulled off. Yeah, as he said in this, it would be incredibly hard to balance because you'd have to build both kinds of defense against them. Like, what would you even do with that god in duel? That would be incredibly hard to balance in duel if you had a god that was dealing multiple damage types. Because in duel, you tend to just like build defense, like 2nd or 3rd item or something like that. Usually 3rd item, I think, in duel. So that would be very difficult for duel, but I think it would be cool if they could have like a multi-class god. Even if they just went so far as like a Mage Guardian multi-class or a Hunter, Warrior, Assassin multi-class, something like that, where you don't have to change damage types, because I think changing damage types could be problematic. Global presence, a god who sits still or doesn't move much but has global presence or makes himself useful from extreme distances. Apparently similar to a Heroes of the Storm champion. I don't know what he's like, but yeah, this would be quite cool. Someone that sort of, it would obviously be incredibly unique. Nothing like what we've ever seen in Smite before. But they've been getting more ambitious with their god designs recently, so I think maybe this is potentially on the table. Not in the pipeline, but on the table. Something like this, where maybe you just like, you're always in Fountain, and what you do is like use your abilities to like send help to like certain lanes from the Fountain. Probably a support character would be my guess, but it doesn't have to be. Magnetism, a god who uses magnetism or force to control the battlefield, pushing or pulling people or even objects like player walls. So not amazingly interesting there. We have pushes and pulls, just like combining it with magnetism. Multi-god, a god who is 2 or more gods in one that can be switched between or even controlled separately somehow. kind of like ice climbers from Smash, I guess, in a way. Controlling them separately would be, I don't know how they would even implement that. That seems very confusing. They probably would never do that, but a god who is like 2 or more gods and you can swap in and out, they might do, especially if it was like a fountain change thing. Not like you can change the gods on demand, but that you can, and when you're in the fountain, you can switch. Almost like Achilles' armor again, using that reference. That could be quite cool. Stopping time, temporarily stopping time, or freezing cooldown somehow. Yeah. Freezing cooldowns could be quite cool. You know, maybe you hit someone, like that's just like a minor mechanic they could add to a certain kit. You know, if they're using a time god, just like if you get hit by this ability, it freezes all your cooldowns for 1 second. I think that could be very cool and totally something I could see Hi-Rez doing. That's a very minor, not too intrusive mechanic. I don't think people will cry if like their cooldowns were stopped for 1 second. I don't think that would be a major deal. It's just sort of like reverse cooldown reduction in a way. We have Living CC, a god who is essentially just a living CC, their passive possibly being a constant minor slow or something like that. That could be cool. A constant like minor slow seems interesting. Potentially annoying because I'm a big complainer about Chernobog's global ult slow. I really hate that. The fact that like I'm in solo lane, minding my own business, I'm not even part of the fight that Chernobog is ulting to or from, but I'm getting global slowed. I really don't like that. But if it was like, you know, a minor slow around them or something, I wouldn't hate that too much. But a god that is living CC could be quite cool. Because like obviously Guardians and stuff, they have a lot of CC, but they also have other things. But a god that was like focused almost entirely around CC, like very low damage, no like real supportive abilities, just CC. I think that could be cool, but possibly quite difficult to balance around. A rhythm god using abilities in certain order or at certain times grants bonuses, like a rhythm or dance game. Interesting. I don't know if they do this though. It feels like it'd be too far from the core design of like most Smite gods. Illusions, the Morgan and Loki barely hit this nail. A god who makes use of illusions to do their work is slippery and hard to catch. This is what I hoped Loki would be, to be honest with you, when they were reworking him. They've kind of kept him as that just like burst assassin. I was hoping they'd go more into Loki's sort of like trickery and illusion and stuff like that. So a god that uses this kind of stuff could be very cool in my opinion. A structure creator, not in the sense of a tower or phoenix, but a god that can summon different parts to create structures depending on what elements they mix. I don't fully understand this. I guess they mean like Vulcan turret, you know, maybe sort of like old Vulcan, where like he was primarily focused around his structures. I think this is probably what they mean with that. The fact that old Vulcan didn't work and they had to rework him makes me think maybe they're not going to try this again, but you never know. Voodoo god, not necessarily voodoo, but a god who uses a puppet or doll to target enemies similar to Kali. They can attack this god from a distance if they have them locked. I'm going to be honest, I don't fully understand what they mean by this. Do they mean like they have a voodoo doll and like they just use that to do all their work, but the god itself never actually engages in combat? I don't really understand that. A power-up god, over time or through some other mechanic, the god will be able to change attributes of themselves in different trees. They could choose more power, more speed, etc., and their physical appearance would change to match. So once again, there's a comparison to Achilles' armor here in a way. Basically, this is like an RPG skill tree. You think like Borderlands or whatever, where you have those 3 different skill trees in Borderlands. If any of you guys have played that, basically you can go up like 3 different trees and get different abilities and stuff like that. I think this could be very cool. Sort of, it would definitely be something that happened in the fountain, I think. It's essentially like a secondary way of like an item sort of thing. Ability power-ups in the same sense, only their abilities start out bland and weak. Yeah, I actually, I did a god design sort of, not full god concepts, but like god ideas video a little while back. And this is very similar to something that I mentioned in that video, in that their abilities start as sort of a bread and butter form. So like, for example, it might start as like a line damage ability at level 1, but then at like rank 3 of the ability or something, you get to choose if it becomes a line damage with a stun that does less damage, or like a line damage with a circle target at the end that does bigger damage, something like that. So you can kind of like choose different things. Debuff caster, I think once again this was similar to something I had in my my concepts video. A caster who trades almost all of their damage in favor of various debuffs that can help their team. Like, this would be really cool. So a god that is entirely focused around like buffs and debuffs as a support, I think could be a really awesome addition to the game, and a very unique god design kit. A combination caster who has like weak abilities but using them in tandem or succession in the correct way is like gonna give them a bigger benefit. Very cool. I like this a lot. An anti-mage, yeah, so Old Nox, any of you who have been around for Old Nox or have watched like videos on stuff, I have videos on Old Nox. She was very much designed as like an anti-mage. She didn't want you casting abilities. Like her ultimate, she linked to you, and then for every ability you cast while she was linked to you, you took additional damage and were stunned, I think, or slowed, something like that. I don't remember completely with that, but yeah, she basically didn't want you to cast abilities, was her sort of theme, and I think that was really cool. I actually prefer Old Nox to New Nox, to be completely honest with you. I think that kind of a kit could be really cool. A parasitic god, the god on their own would suck, but they would attach themselves to allies and be carried around, gaining different abilities, would definitely be a support. That could be quite cool, yeah. So basically you just, you do a lane or whatever, you attach to your ADC and you can start like gaining maybe unique abilities based on who you attach to and things like that. Would take a lot of work, but could be cool. A cooking god, all abilities are on a set timer and have 3 forms. In each form, the ability trades something and gains something else. Raw abilities had... Oh, okay, so you can have like raw, cooked, and burned abilities. That sounds like a lot of complexity that high-res probably wouldn't go for. They don't add needless complexity. They like to keep god kits quite simple. So this probably wouldn't ever be in the game, but it's interesting. A luck-based god, a support or mage whose kit revolves around slight luck or RNG. The RNG will provide buffs no matter what, but it would be randomized how strong the buffs are. So I guess Baba Yaga is like the closest we're going to get to this. People don't really complain about Baba's RNG very much, to be honest. It's quite tame the way they did the RNG for that. So I think Baba is as far as we're going to go with sort of an RNG-based god. You know, she's kind of designed to be RNG-based, so I don't think they'll do another god like that. Pain for Power God, a mechanic where a god could hurt themselves to gain more power. Yeah, kind of like Thanatos, in a way. Bullet Hell God would be a major hunter whose entire kit revolves around shooting different projectiles with different effects. They will be absolute garbage in melee range, but uncontested at a close distance. Or at a distance, sorry, not a close distance, they're a projectile god. This would be really cool in my opinion. Like, all of their abilities are just like line damage projectiles just firing at you all the time, like keeping you on your toes. I think that could be very cool. Burrowing, yeah, pretty cool. Like, essentially like a very long range jump or something like that. Barrier Reflection, I'm surprised this isn't in the game yet, to be honest. There's obviously the Nike ability, which is kind of similar to this, but it's not quite the same thing. It doesn't sort of reflect the projectiles back, it just absorbs the projectiles. I feel like this on a support really kind of should be in the game at this point, like a Reinhardt barrier or whatever. Counter, a split-second counter ability. If timed correctly, you would spare yourself damage while also doing damage back to the attacker. Yeah, this is in a lot of games, like this is in fighting games, it's in Smash and things like that, like parries and counter abilities. I'm very surprised this isn't in the game either. This seems like a mechanic that is sort of a no-brainer that they would add onto certain characters. Like, honestly, he mentions Raven 2 here. Raven 2 could just be this. I think as a fighter type character, Raven 2 being a parry or a counter would be better than just like immunity. I think that would actually be like a good redesign for Raven's 2 to make it less like Shanga's 2. I don't know. Very surprised this isn't in the game already, to be completely honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this. Stasis, put an ally or you in stasis form and contain them, making them unable to move. Yeah, this you have to be careful with. Hi-Res have been branching out a little bit with being able to interact with your teammates. Like Yamoja, for example, she control her teammates by like sending them the wrong way using her little ring. So they have been branching out a little bit more in terms of abilities that can affect your teammates, but they probably don't want to go as far as like you can stasis people. It'd probably be too trolly. Like you imagine you support like when you're trying to solo someone, just stasises you. Like, they'd have to be very careful if they ever were to implement this. A trade-off Assassin Hunter. An Assassin or Hunter with a stance switch. In one stance they can only lifesteal, while in the other they can only crit. That's a bit weird. I don't really know if I like that. I guess it's kind of like Ula in a way, but not really. A Healing Hunter. Swap between damage and healing abilities will be very hard to balance considering Hunters are typically made for damage. This is quite cool. Basically like one stance is damage, one stance is healing. It's kind of like Hell, but a Hunter version. An enemy tether, an ability that lets you tether 2 enemies together or tegel. Yeah, this is cool. I like this a lot. You can sort of like pick an enemy, you're then tethered to that wall, and you can't break it. It's sort of like a Persephone tether from her ultimate when it hits. Like if you're not hit by the ult, but you're in the range, you get tethered. Something like that, and you can maybe like tether 2 enemies together and then like click the button again to pull them towards each other or something like that. I think that's a very cool mechanic. Wall leaping, I love the way it explains this. Who you ricochet except you are the arrow. Very good way of explaining it. I think this is cool too. It's kind of like Mulan's 3. I think this post was made before Mulan was revealed, so they've kind of added that in with Mulan's 3, but something where you can like bounce from multiple walls, kind of like Who you ricochet, that could be quite cool. Storing abilities, you'll be able to store a projectile that hits you and reuse it later against your enemies. That's kind of interesting. Almost like a parry in a way, like a projectile parry. Like you activate this parry, you store that projectile, and then maybe the ability doesn't go on cooldown, but you can hit the ability again and it'll fire the projectile out that you parried. That's kind of interesting. Hiding inside minions. Oh, it's like an ambush thing. That's kind of cool. Like a stealth mechanic where you can hide inside minions. I don't really know how applicable it would be though, given like a lot of team fights happen in the jungle, it would have to be like a secondary effect for an ability. You won't be able to have that as like the primary effect for the ability because it would be too minor of an effect. A soldier summoner, summon a special unit that you can control with your abilities, so kind of like Hera in a way, but sort of more focused on it, like Hera, but if Argus was sort of out all the time and your abilities were properly focused around Argus. A boundary god, they give an example of Terminus from Roman mythology. Your abilities will be able to block off enemies from your allies, set down rings and other damaging borders, and basically booby trap areas. Kind of interesting. A little bit like Yamoja. This description kind of fits Yamoja in a way. Indirect god control, you will be able to project yourself out of your god's body and still control them. However, if you were killed, you would reappear where you casted. So kind of like Horus in a way. Maybe this post was made before Horus was revealed, because this is very similar to Horus Ultimate, kind of. Buffing allied abilities. Yeah, this is another thing, like what I mentioned further up, where I'm very surprised this isn't in the game already. It's a mechanic that I could totally see being added. One of your abilities will allow you to buff an ally, causing their next ability to gain a bonus based on what type of ability it is. Like, it could have longer range, it could have more damage, it could have a longer CC time. I think this is just a no-brainer. Like, a support should have this ability, straight up. And honestly, you could maybe even make a support, like, sort of based around this whole mechanic, where sort of like you're mainly like buffing your enemies, buffing your allies' abilities, maybe debuffing your enemies and things like that, kind of bringing it back to that one from before where it's like a buff and debuff support. This is a really cool mechanic. I really hope they add this. Shadow walking, you can walk through walls. They'd have to be careful with it because mobility in Smite is very highly valued. And this is basically a permanent jump. Maybe not permanent, because you could have it like on a cooldown and like you sort of like, you know, Mori's invisibility or whatever, where you get invisibility for like 8 seconds. Maybe with this you get shadow walking for 8 seconds. But still, like, being able to walk through walls like that, it's like, think how powerful Giannis's portals are and how powerful jumps are. Having that all the time, I don't know. They'd have to be careful with that. Flight, you can enter a vertical plane where you cannot be hit, but you can't cast abilities. In this stance, you can fly over walls and such, but it'd drain your passive meter or some other reserve. I don't know about that. I don't think flight really fits in the game, honestly. Possession, basically knocks dash but into an enemy, where you could deal damage with your abilities while inside them. Yeah, this could be interesting on some kind of like parasite god, or maybe some sort of voodoo style god or something like that. A hive god, a bug-related god who controls a swarm of some kind that allows them to cast their abilities. You would have to meet some certain criteria of some kind to grow the swarm, basically visible mana but cooler. I don't fully understand what they mean with this, but it sounds like an interesting concept. A sacrifice god, a god who can sacrifice themselves in different ways to benefit their allies. Yeah, so kind of like a reverse Thanatos, like you do damage to yourself, or like CC yourself or something, I don't know, and you can buff allies that way. I think there's a lot of unexplored territory in terms of supportive characters providing buffs to allies. Mirror clone, you create a clone of yourself that mimics what you are doing but reflected in front of you so that you both face inward to a point. So kind of like how Mori's 3 clones come out and then come inwards, something like that, pretty cool. Mirrors, simple mirror mechanic. When you walk through it, you teleport to where it was placed, almost like a Giannis portal. If you fire projectiles, yeah, this is cool. If you fire projectiles through it, they reappear out the other side of the mirror. Like, sort of if a Giannis portal worked for projectiles, that could be really cool. It's like you put a mirror on, like, your purple buff or something, and then another mirror at the enemy tower. You can fire, like, who you ricochet through that, and, like, it comes out of the enemy tower. That's a really cool mechanic. I could see them adding that also. A mounting god, an ability that lets you or your allies mount you in some sort of like a vehicle. That could be cool as well. Like, you have like some insane movement speed and you can sort of piggyback someone on top of you. A self-destruct, a last minute death ability or passive that causes you to explode, dealing massive damage but also killing yourself. Yeah, probably a passive. You won't want this to be an entire ability slot. That feels kind of bad. But some kind of passive, you know, like Persephone's, where like if you have a certain amount of something, on death, you can like choose to explode yourself. I think Kog'Maw has a similar ability in League of Legends. Scramble, an ability that reverses or scrambles the movement of your enemies. No, I don't think I like that. I don't think controlling your enemy's movement is something that should really be in the game too much. That's kind of a bit too disruptive. Yeah, I don't know about that. Disable, an ability that causes the last ability used by an enemy to be disabled until they use another. So that's kind of like a more extreme version of the freezing cooldowns mechanic that we discussed earlier. I prefer the freezing cooldowns because with this, like, if you use your entire kit and that's the last ability you use, you're going to have to wait like 9 seconds or something until you could use that ability again. Like when one of your other abilities comes off cooldown, you can use it. Structure-based god, yeah, buffing your towers and phoenixes. This, I think, would work better as a sub-theme. I don't think you want an entire god designed around this because it's too narrow of a mechanic to design an entire god around, but I think a a god with one ability or maybe two abilities at the absolute most that are designed around this could be quite cool. Heavy ranged attacks, once again another mechanic that really just should be in the game, and I'm surprised it's not. Ranged basic attacks that travel slower but hit harder as opposed to fast and light, because at the moment all basic attacks travel at the same speed, and I think it's a no-brainer really that, you know, like maybe Heimdallr could work like this. I know Heimdallr has the kind of unique basic attacks already, but something like that where like they're using a really heavy weapon, like throwing axes or something like that, and they travel slower but they hit super hard if they do hit you. Charged basic attacks, you hold down to charge and let go of it. Yeah, so similar to this mechanic actually, where you could sort of like just choose to like light click and you'll do a normal basic attack at normal speed, but you can choose to hold down the click and you'll charge it up, and then it'll go like, maybe it'll go faster or like slower, more damage, something like that. Ceasefire CC, a silence that you can't attack in any way. Yeah, so like it just negates basic attacks also. It's like a silence combined with a disarm. This is something I could totally see them adding. It's not incredibly interesting, but this could definitely be in the game. Damnation, a spooky ability that causes the selected god to be truly banished from the game for a short amount of time. One version I made was that you can only see them and they can see you, and you're both suspended in an alternate plane of some kind. The second version was that they were sent to this dimension alone for some time. So this is kind of like just a banish basically, sort of like with what you do with Heim Ultimate. Once again, I'm not sure if this post was released before Heim was released. It probably was, I think. Yeah, it's kind of like what Heim Ultimate does in a way, but I can kind of see what they're going for this. It could be quite cool. Sort of like you go to the upside down from Stranger Things or something like that, and you can like see the fight happening, but they can't see you and you're like stuck there. That could be quite cool. Hallucination, a soft CC. Yeah, so they totally have this. They added this on Cthulhu, so this post was definitely made before Cthulhu was released. So yeah, they've added this since then. A living tower, a god who could temporarily become a living tower and a movable structure that projects protections or something, but can also attack. Oh, projecting protections is in like you give your teammates protections in an AoE. This is pretty cool, yeah. Like maybe an ultimate or something on a support, like you just become this like tower that like protects your teammates, and maybe you can like fire stuff. I think that could be a really cool design. Mana drain, very surprised this isn't in the game yet, but maybe, he says here it's hard to balance. Maybe it's a bit too disruptive, I don't know. Like someone stealing your mana. It's quite disruptive, I don't know, but like they can steal your health, why can't they steal your mana? I think this could be in the game if they implemented it carefully. A cadaver god, an idea I actually just thought of while typing. If you died near another dead god, you would be able to resurrect yourself through them, using their body to reanimate yourself though weaker. So kind of like a Persephone passive, I guess, but you die near someone. A trap placing god, a god who is based around setting traps and mines to dish out CC and map control, so like Teemo from League of Legends. Teemo gets a lot of flack from League, so maybe we don't want that in Smite, who knows. But it could work. They'd have to be careful, because this could easily become Loki #2, where everyone just despises this god, so they'd have to be careful implementing this. Switching places, an ability that lets you switch places with an ally. Once again, they have to be careful with an implementation that involves fucking with your allies, because most people don't want to do that. Most people don't want to be like, have their position changed by an ally, because you control way too much with that. So they'd have to be pretty careful with it. But like I said, they have been doing stuff like Umoja 3. I think it's a 3, right? The Ring. I don't play Umoja. But yeah, they have been getting a little more feisty with stuff that affects your allies in recent years. So maybe they would do this. I don't know. Counterspell, a buff that causes abilities or the next ability that hits you to have the opposite effect. So damage heals you, CC hits them instead. That's pretty interesting, yeah. Sort of like a Nemesis shield in a way, but like the next ability that hits you sort of is the reversed effect. A ward-based god, this god would have abilities based around having map vision as well as having ward-based abilities. He had an idea for Heimdall where he could channel the Bifrost from all wards, which would let allies teleport via ward to him and gain a buff to battle. This is interesting, but once again, I think this will work better as a sub-theme. You wouldn't want an entire god designed around wards, because wards are like only one small facet of the game. And also in like low level, a lot of people don't ward, and on like arena and stuff, people don't ward. So you would have to design it with other modes and stuff in mind, and all levels of play in mind. I think a minor sort of part of one ability of a god could have this. I don't think an entire god designed around this would really work. A no damage god, yeah, this is really interesting. They're just like fully focused around healing or buffs and debuffs, things like that. This should be in the game straight up. It would be difficult to design, but I think a support that is designed like this could be really, really cool, and I would probably play the shit out of this god. A shapeshifter god, not in the sense of the Morrigan. This god will be able to change form in a manner similar to Achilles, where they trade stats but they have multiple forms. Yeah, this is cool. Once again, he brings that comparison to Achilles that I was talking about earlier with his armor. So you could have like, you know, a snake form, a lion form, almost like 72 transformations or something, where you have like multiple forms you can choose from, where like one you'd be tanky, one you'd be fast with like damage, etc. A changing damage type, a god who could change their damage type, however it would have some sort of penalty, maybe they can't change when they select. Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier, like probably this would be a select it at the start of the game type thing. So like maybe they have like that advantage in picks and bans where like you don't know if they're going to be going physical and going in solo or going magical and going in mid or something like that. But I think being able to change on the fly in the middle of a game will be too problematic. Not only because it'd be just really strong in general, but like for duel, a god that can change damage types mid-game in duel would be absolutely broken because people build defense in every game in duel, so you would have to build like mixed defense against them to counter them or something like that, and then they just stay in one damage type because you built an inefficient mixed defense item. This would probably be too problematic to put into the game unless it was decided like in the fountain at the start of the game and you couldn't change it. Hit scan basic attacks, another thing that should probably be in the game, to be honest. I think it'd be pretty cool. For hit scan is basically like as soon as you press the button, it hits the target immediately. There's no travel time. A climbing god, a god who could climb on walls that aren't the map boundary walls, would allow for interesting ganks. Yeah, this is kind of like what I feel like Arachne should do, really. If they were to rework Arachne implementing this kind of mechanic where like she jumps onto the walls and like webs along them or something, that could be pretty cool. Chargeable abilities. All of this god's abilities could be charged by holding the attack button once used, granting them. But yeah, this is cool. Sort of like the basic attacks that we talked about earlier, where you can hold down the button to charge them up for like more damage. A god designed around like chargeable abilities is definitely something I can see them adding, and probably should be, to be honest. It's quite a cool mechanic. A completely ranged guardian. A guardian, except they don't jump into the fight directly. They would have a kit that allows them to do their job from a distance. Just like a, yeah, so basically like a mage support. I've been calling for a mage support of this style for a long time. And if they make it a ranged guardian, that's fine. A weapon forger. They can forge different weapons out of battle or in the fountain, and they would have different effects and will completely change their playstyle. However, they could only choose one. Also, like you forge it throughout the game and you sort of choose which one you're going to go into. That's kind of cool. Stat stealing, a thief who can steal stats of the enemy gods temporarily. When they are killed, stats are returned. I wouldn't want them to be like for the life. This sounds like they mean like for your life, you've lost those stats. But like a temporary stat steal would be pretty fine. They've done that with like attack speed before, so for other stats, probably could be okay as well. Split, a mechanic where dealing high damage to a god causes them to split into multiple clones. Yeah, I think this is also in League. Right? Is it Zac or something from League? I think they have a similar mechanic like that. This could be cool. I could totally see them adding this, to be honest. Split version 2, those through some criteria, the god can multiply themselves, allowing them to cast basic attacks and abilities in various different directions. Could be interesting. Probably a little too complex to ever see play in the game, though, I think. Secondary store, a god that you could buy items from. These items will grant temporary. So they kind of implemented this in a way. Like Rat has the acorns where they're like a temporary store that, not a temporary store, like a unique store they can buy from. Baron's Brew, you get Baron's Brew if you have Baron on your team. So kind of just like a more in-depth version of those sorts of mechanics, I think is what they're going for here. An orb mechanic. This god would have an orb that they could command around. Yeah, this is in League, I think. And cast their spells to have like, so like your abilities come from the orb also. I think that's a pretty cool mechanic. They'd probably just be like ripping it straight from League, but yeah, pretty cool. Telekinesis. Cerberus sort of has this actually. You'll be able to CC an enemy god and then throw them in a direction. Yeah, so basically like Cerberus, but like more in depth. Slow motion, an ability that causes enemies to move in slow motion. We have this. This must have been released before Roller Run. I think it definitely was released before Roller Run. So yeah, this has been implemented into the game now, so cool. Soul extraction, used from this concept. You would be able to separate the soul of an enemy, and attacking it would deal damage to them no matter where they... Ooh, that's kind of interesting. They'd have to be careful with implementing it, but sort of like you pull the soul out of them, and then like your mage can just like dump their kit right there and not have to worry about hitting it. That's pretty interesting, actually. That would be like cool for a support character. And his final one, ability painting. Sort of complicated to explain and implement. It would be like AMC Honey, except painting in certain patterns will produce certain effects. That's like super in-depth and once again probably too complex for what high-risk look for in their god design kits, but pretty interesting mechanic. And so yeah, that's all of the mechanics and like god designs and stuff from this guy. Chaos-0, once again, this is entirely his work. It's not mine. I'm just reviewing it and giving my thoughts on it, what I think could be in the cards for the future of Smite. Some of these have been implemented since then. Some of them have been implemented in a minor way, but not in the same way he envisions them. Some of them haven't been even tried. A lot of them haven't been tried that I think should be. There's some really cool designs here, so full credit to this guy for coming up with this stuff. Like, way more imaginative than I could be, But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you have any more sort of like content like this where it's just like me chatting and reviewing something, then let me know. You know, link me stuff you want me to review, anything like that, because these are quite fun to make. So if you enjoyed it, then definitely let me know. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.